The following segment is brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action by signing up at future42.org. Last week on the subscriber-only episode of Undivided, we talked at length with Washington State Representative Jesse Johnson, a Democrat, and he was the chief architect of a lot of the police reform proposals that were pushed through in the 2021 legislative session, including one that's getting national attention. And it's a law that basically makes it impossible for police to pursue suspects. It sets a very, very high bar, and it's led to record numbers of people just driving away from traffic stops. And in my opinion, has led to an overall degradation of law and order in our communities. And so we had Representative Johnson on, who's not seeking re-election, so he's not going to be a lawmaker for very much longer, but we had him on to talk about it. Here's a little clip of that. Your community that you represent in Federal Way experienced record homicide rates in 2021 while you guys were focused on police reform. Were you focused on the wrong thing? Should you have been doing more, even if it was at the same time, to deal with the serious rise in violent crime in your own community?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of this conversation in my community since 2016, where we had 4 young people murdered and we all came to City Hall. This was prior to when I even ran for office, City Council. And we had these conversations with the mayor. We provided the City Council and the mayor at the time a list of 10 solid, viable recommendations to decrease youth gun violence in our community. And I can tell you not one of them was implemented. It's sadly, I think politics still continues to get in the way of progress. And I was not going to let that happen post George Floyd, post Breonna Taylor, post Manny Ellis.
Now, in that interview, I called out Representative Johnson for something he'd said on Twitter during a debate over this bill. He had said that some police are just mad about it because they can't go around killing people. And obviously, that struck me because here you have a lawmaker who claims that he wants to sit down at the table in good faith with law enforcement to come up with best practices. But then he's saying that some police are just mad at these reforms because they don't want to go around killing people. And so I questioned him on that. It just seems like that's a very intense thing to say when you're saying that you want to come to the table with law enforcement.
Well, I mean, I'm someone that really believes not in what you say, but what you do. And I know a lot of people agree with that. I mean, what you do means a lot more than what you say. And when I look at some departments in our state, I mean, I think that there's some major culture shifting that needs to happen. Now, one of the organizations that Representative Johnson has used to defend this controversial pursuit policy is the Washington Fraternal Order of Police. And it's his assertion that the Fraternal Order of Police endorsed or supported this pursuit policy. And so he points to them and says, hey, it's not just me, it's members of law enforcement who support this pursuit bill. And so the Fraternal Order of Police had stayed kind of quiet when this controversy was brewing over Representative Johnson saying that police are just mad because they can't go around killing people. So I invited the Fraternal Order of Police on the show to not only talk about where they truly stand on this controversial pursuit policy, but also, of course, to have them react to the comments made by Representative Johnson. All right, introduce yourself, sir. Give folks a little background as to why you're in the role you're in.
So my name is James Shumsher. I'm a 28-year law enforcement veteran. I'm currently the police chief for the city of Algona, and more importantly, I'm the vice president of the Washington State chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police. I'm also married to a 27-year law enforcement veteran. She's a sergeant at the King County Sheriff's Department. And I'm the father of a 2-year veteran of my daughter, who decided after she graduated college to go into the police profession. And now her husband graduates the academy in a couple of weeks. So I'm very blessed to have a lot of law enforcement in my family. So,
well, that's amazing. Well, our thanks to your entire family for the service that they give to our communities. That's awesome. The Fraternal Order of Police, who do you represent?
So in Washington State, I'll start with Washington State. In Washington State, we currently have about 3,400 members. We get mischaracterized all the time as a union. We are not a union. We are a police organization. In fact, The Fraternal Order of Police is the largest police organization in the country. We're on pace to be, probably by the end of the month, 370,000 law enforcement or peace officer professionals in the country. Here in Washington State, we do have a labor arm that does traditional labor representation, but a majority of us are fraternal members that we get involved because it's the one organization you can join as soon as you go into the academy, and you can stay in when you retire. And there's a lot of benefits to that. So
can you talk a little bit about what work you do then, if the majority of it is not labor?
So for me, I'm responsible for the policy arm of the Fraternal Order of Police here in Washington State. I also hold a position on the National Fraternal Order of Police Policy or Legislative Affairs Committee. So for me, it's my job to represent the organization in Olympia, to have the discussions, to work on policy. I have a good team around me. I have a couple of attorneys. I have a legislative crew that is comprised of officers from all ranks, all over the state, from Spokane to Clark County to Skagit County and out on the peninsula. So we meet a couple times a week. We have discussions, and those members are in various size departments. They're from various size departments, like mid-size to larger to smaller. One thing about the Fraternal Order of Police, it's really unique. You have a guild or a union. Everybody has to belong because that's where you belong. Here, people join the Fraternal Order of Police. It's their decision, and so we don't make people join because their guild is in the organization. It's an individual decision, so makes it a little bit unique.
So as you set out looking at policy priorities in Olympia, are you going there on behalf of the members of Washington's Fraternal Order of Police, or to represent their interests? Are you going there to represent what you think is best for the community? Tell me about kind of the spirit that you go to Olympia with.
So for me, I believe that we need to have conversations. We need to, in order to work on policy, we need to be in the middle. We need to be able to have the difficult conversations. We need to be able to disagree, but although we may be able to disagree, we still focus on the things that we do agree on and try to move forward together. I think one of the mandates that I've been given by our membership is to be that representative that's in the middle, that voice. One of the couple of guiding principles that we have in Olympia, right, is profession above partisanship, policy above politics. I think oftentimes, and this is an election year, and it's clear that, public safety is an election topic, right? So we unfortunately get dragged into politics. It's unavoidable. We understand it. But at the same time, I think this country as a whole, for that reason, is really longing for that place where we're in the middle working on solutions together. I know that I am. I know the people that I speak to in my community that I protect and represent and am a part of say that. And I know that our members say that as well. It does no good to go to a corner and throw bombs at each other. And so we try very hard to stay in the middle and try to work on good policy.
It's like a commercial for unDivided, James. I appreciate that.
Exactly. I listen to you. I totally appreciate it. So
when it comes to 2021, let's go back to that time a little bit. Obviously, when the session started, we knew that police reform was going to be a key issue for the Democratic majority. We were just coming off of 2020, which was a pretty exceptional year in this country for a number of reasons. So when you went into that session from a policy perspective, I guess did you have any fears or concerns about the types of things that would be floated?
So I did have a lot of concerns, and not just me. I think our whole organization. And what I would say that session began immediately after the George Floyd incident. I will tell you, we started getting calls, and there were a flurry of things that, that the legislature was floating, and almost within 2 weeks, and there were radical things that, I know the ball got moved to one side a lot in that session, but what it could have been was a lot worse. You just take a look at the bills that passed, where they originally started and where they ended up. There was actually some movement. One example of that would be the canines. But back to what I was saying, we started in July having conversations with legislators, having conversation with stakeholders. It was apparent there was going to be a lot of police accountability or reform legislation. About mid-September, it started shaping up to what was going to, what eventually was the slate of reforms that came forward, which allowed us to focus and work on some of those, and try to dial some of those back in respect, and bring some of those aspects back to the middle. So, but I'll be honest with you, I have a lot of gray hair on the left and right, and it started during that session. So,
and you are correct in the fact that, and we'll get to what did pass, but there are some things that, at least from my perspective, I was happy to see be left behind. You mentioned the canine bill, which would have made, police canines virtually useless, in my opinion. And I know that there was some bipartisan effort to roll that back, and it was something I highlighted at the time, and I was happy to see that be rolled back. But, you mentioned things that were kind of extreme that didn't make it through. There are things that made it through that a lot of people in your profession still find to be extreme, and the pursuit bill would be chief among them. To clear the air on this, where does the Fraternal Order of Police stand today on the pursuit law?
Sure. We haven't moved that much from where we were when it started, but I'll be glad to, when that portion of the bill was discussed, and I think if you go back and listen, and I'm sure you'll play it, Rep. Johnson said there were some heated discussions between the FOP and him. That was one of the topics that we said, hey, this is probably going to blow up, and we're probably going to have to go back and tweak it. That being said, I'm a smaller agency, right, in South King County, so I had a very restricted pursuit policy in the first place. Our president, Marco Monteblanco, comes from a mid-sized agency, Kennewick. They too had a very restrictive pursuit policy before the law was in place. We were trying to highlight those kind of things. And then, as Representative Johnson mentioned, a lot of people other mentioned, you have Bellevue, you have Kirkland, that have very restrictive pursuit policies before. And, so not much changed. That being said, there are other agencies that had a more liberal pursuit policy, and it has dramatically affected their job. One of the things that I had heartache with, and the FOP had heartache with, was the original version of the bill had a exclusion which left it back to reasonable suspicion for domestic violence crimes, and that was taken out, which led to us not really supporting what went through. I mean, for me, one of the biggest crimes that my team investigates are domestic violence calls. Now, where we're at, we recognize that we should have that discussion. And what we're asking for, and I think there are others that are asking for it as well, is kind of, hey, let's put all the stakeholders in a room. Let's have those discussions and make a policy recommendation to the legislature. It's a long session, and we craft some legislation that is acceptable to all stakeholders. Take it out of Olympia, put everybody in a room, and let's have those tough discussions, and let's see if we can get where. Which, by the way, is where canine ended up. And I will tell you, you talk to anybody on any side of that issue, everybody is satisfied with how the canine policy was crafted and how it came out, and it's still in place today. I mean, we keep close checks on those. We're asking to do the same thing with pursuits.
Chief, a few things there. It sounds to me, and forgive me if I'm mischaracterizing, that you aren't happy with the pursuit bill and that you never were. Is that fair? Because when Representative Jesse Johnson has repeatedly used the Washington Fraternal Order of Police to defend the bill, saying you guys endorsed it. Did you endorse it initially?
So I wouldn't say unhappy. I would say we're not satisfied. What I would say is the pursuit was just one section of 1054, and there are things like the canine that we got taken care of. There are other things that caused us to say, look, we're not happy with all this legislation, but because you had that conversation with us, we were at the table and we were able to dial some of those back. We're going to go ahead and support some of these measures with the caveat, and we were very clear, and you can go back and check our testimony. Hey, we may have to come back and tweak these. It wasn't a wholehearted, yes, but when a legislator that is started in one direction, has come to the middle and is asking for our input and is willing to work with us then yes, we're going to honor that process, and we're going to support what we can support. But it's not, it's a work in progress is more what I would say.
So to be clear, when he says that House Bill 1054 was endorsed by the Washington Fraternal Order of Police, is that true? Yes or no?
I would point you to our statements at the time, and it basically says what I just said. And yeah, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer, but we lukewarm, not really. I wouldn't use the term lukewarm. I would say that we endorsed our work on that bill.
Okay. So you weren't 100% satisfied with where things ended up, but it was better than where you started, so you just accepted it.
That's correct.
Okay. So in hindsight, do you regret sort of a placid acceptance of the pursuit bill, given everything that's happened since then?
No. So like I explained to you earlier, a lot of us had very restrictive pursuit policies in the first place. And the other thing that I would point out, and I'm a police chief, so I'm gonna, administrators are all over the place on pursuits. The law enforcement profession is not on the same sheet of music about pursuits. I mean, I was just paying attention to Twitter a little bit earlier, and I see there's an article about where a larger agency does not want to utilize techniques to prevent pursuits from happening. In fact, I went the exact opposite. We throw spike strips under when we have someone passed out, looks like and the motor's running, it looks like they're under the influence of drugs. Then we put the spike strips under the back of the car, we pin it in, and then we approach the vehicle. Now, have we had a push bumper pushed in? Yes. Have we spiked tires? Absolutely. From an administrator's perspective, I would rather pay $200 for somebody's tire than have to deal with the fallout of that person going into my community in the state that they were in. So,
and I don't think it's controversial. To your point, there was a lot of agencies that already had pursuit policies that really weren't impacted by HB 1054. But of course, the key difference is now the criminals are keenly aware. And that's the part that you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. So even when you go back to fix this, and let's say you change the standard when it comes to a violent offense from reasonable or from probable cause to reasonable suspicion, I mean, how do you contend with the fact that criminals are now hyper aware of what police can and cannot do when it comes to their ability to flee?
That's a great question. And it's not just adjusting the standard or what type of crime you can pursue for. There has to be an extra accountability piece, so that you add enhancements, charging enhancements or sentencing enhancements, that if you get involved in a pursuit. Now, that requires another aspect of the criminal justice system to be involved and be an active stakeholder in this process, and that is your prosecutors. I mean, I would say it's a mischaracterization to say that the pursuit bill in and of itself has led to where we're at today. I mean, you can go back 7-8 years and you can see this trend of lack of prosecution. You can see, and you can see I think there was a study probably 7 years ago where it said, hey, you arrest somebody in King County for auto theft, it takes them 7 arrests to actually get charged. Mm-hmm. I think it's gotten better than that, but not much. And there is talk that the prosecutors are even talking about creating a diversion program for felony crimes. And so and the prosecutors have never really been pinged during this whole process about weighing in, about having to be an active participant in the system so that we can have a well-rounded approach. Just giving officers the ability to chase, all that's for naught if it's not prosecuted, right? Or charges. So for us, it's not just one thing. We have to take a broader approach to the pursuit issue.
Yeah, and I think people agree, and most reasonable people understand that there's a lot of contributing factors to the public safety crisis that we find ourselves in. But I think the pursuit bill was just this example of this degradation of the respect for law and order, where you could have someone calling 911 to report the police, and that they were pursuing them. And so it's just been this glaring example of, at least in my opinion, a bill that was very poorly thought out. And no offense, I know that you worked on it, but when I hear that you have people who aren't happy with it, or you had warned Representative Johnson that it might kind of blow up and we'll have to come back to the table. I guess as a citizen, I'm just screaming, well, you should have stayed at the table. You shouldn't have left the table until you had something that you were happy with.
Well, I would say we were at the table all the way up to the end of that session. I would say other groups left the table, and I like to stay focused on the FOP message, but I would say that right up until the end of that session, we were having late night conversations. And even last session, when there were two versions of a pursuit fix, right? One by a Republican in the House and the other by a Democrat in the Senate, right? We actually preferred the House version, and it had bipartisan support coming out of the Public Safety Committee. So, it was good. So
let me end with this, and I'm sure you were anticipating this question. Representative Johnson got into kind of a heated exchange with one of my friends, Jason Rantz, who's a conservative radio host, and he basically said that some police are just mad about this bill because they can't go around killing people. And your organization was faulted for not speaking out against that comment more forcefully. For the record, are some police mad about this bill because they can't go around killing people?
Well, I don't know of any. Okay, and here's where we're at, and I'll make it abundantly clear. What he said was not appropriate, and we addressed that as soon as it came to our attention. We addressed that with him directly. I would think if I had an issue with you and you had an issue with me, the first phone call should be to Brandi or James.
And what did he say?
So he acknowledged that it was a heated exchange, and so it's up to the good representative to defend his comments. And for us, we think it was a terrible comment. It does not represent our profession. And for me personally, who's had a very good relationship with Representative Johnson, and he has picked up the phone, and he and I have had conversations at 11:30 at night, and we've talked at 5:30 in the morning. I will tell you, it's not characteristic of the conversations that he and I have had. And I just think it was a heated exchange. And we took the original position when it came to our attention that and we asked ourselves this question: do we want to stay focused on policy, or do we want to get involved in a Twitter dispute? My job is to focus on the policy and to mend those bridges. And what I would say is, I've been in this profession a very long time, and it is a profession. Some people in my profession call it an industry, and I totally disagree with them. It's a profession. And I've seen good times, I've seen bad times, but what I will tell you is we cannot get anywhere if we don't talk to our community, and we don't talk to people that we don't necessarily agree with, and try to find some common ground. And so that's where we're at. I hope that answers your question, but you know, I wish he had not said it. I really do.
Now, one thing, kind of ran out of time with the interview and had to wrap it up, but one of the things that I pointed out to him after the interview is that, Representative Johnson, even in our lengthy conversation that we had on Wednesday, he didn't really back away from the comment he made about some police just want to go around killing people. Again, here's that clip. You say in one breath that you want to work with law enforcement on this issue, and then you're talking about how police are just mad they can't go around killing people. Why would law enforcement take you as genuine or take you at your word that you want to have conversations with them in good faith?
Well, again, the quote I said was some police, and what I found it's a mix.
So I think if he really regretted tweeting that, he would have taken our interview as an opportunity to clear the air and say, that was unfair of me, it's counterproductive. But I will just note he didn't do that. And so clearly, like he said, he thinks it's a mixed bag. Some police want. And now, do I believe that there are bad police officers in America? Of course I do. But when you are in one breath, as I told him, saying, I want to come to the table with law enforcement or celebrating law enforcement that has worked with you on these proposals, and then saying, police are just mad. Some police are just mad because they want to go around killing people. I just think that that's a little hypocritical. The previous segment was brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org.